into it. Just want to read something from um, last week. I mean, this week. It's been 7 days, so it's last week. He writes, "Thank you, Busuyi, for throwing a little light to this issue. I'm a Yoruba married to an Igbo man. Many a time they tell them your mother's people are traitors. Thank you. For me, it's a relief." And the video was about Awo and the coup. What Adewale Ademoyega really said. Someone says, telling your children their mother is a traitor is not the best thing for any child to go through. You have to work on your kids' emotional health. Sorry about that. So apparently, let me tell you something. It's good to say these things and, you know, have fun with it and, you know, vibe. What I've come to realize is that it's some people's life. Like it's their reality. It's their reality, it's their experience, it's what they're going through, right? And perhaps that's one of the reasons I speak the way I do, because when people get married and you have relationships and all we're thinking about is, oh, I'm going to have, you know, a great, time with a spouse. And sometimes, like I always say, we don't really spend enough time to think about the children, right? We think more about our emotional well-being, so to speak, or our sexual desires, or whatever it is, or the beautiful person you're seeing, or the handsome person, or the money and stuff. But it's important for us to understand. I don't pity. No, you can't say that. No, you can't say that. You can't say that. Well, you can say that. I can't. I don't agree with you, and it's actually wrong. I'm going to tell you that because they are good Igbo people, right? They are good people. There are people who have been married. No, you can say whatever you want to say, but I'm not going to agree with you, and you're wrong. Because, like I always say, we have to be careful of how we put things out there. Serves them right how. There are good people in different parts. I just think that a lot of us are too focused on. I see the reason I'm very careful with all these things is it serves you right. You have also made mistakes in your life. Every single person. There's nobody here who is like you're perfect. You've done everything right. There's nobody like that. And there are things you've done that you look around, you look back and you're like, I wish I didn't do it that way. So imagine if every single thing you did or you've done, people look at you and say, serves you right. How would that make you feel? And what does that even do to help? So I think for me, it's not so much about telling people it serves them right. It's about telling those who are not married yet to look before they leap, to learn from the errors of those who have gone ahead, to understand the fact that, you see, in Africa, you don't really marry a spouse. You get married into families. So if a man marries a woman, it's not just the lady, right? He's not connected to her family. If a woman marries a man, she's not just getting married to a man, especially for a woman marrying a man. They're getting married into that family. And there's a culture, there's a way they see life there. And you're not going to change anything. Don't deceive yourself like someone who went to the UK thinking she was going to be able to change things in the royal family. Just a joke. No, they don't exist for you to change them. If you know you can't deal with it, don't get involved. I'm not mentioning anybody's name, but you get the point. Anyway, the point is this: if you are getting married to people, understand where they're coming from. Don't get involved. Understand that. And by the way, marriage on its own is difficult. It's fun, it's great, but it can be difficult. like without any wala from anybody on its own, just the nature of it, because two people are coming from two different backgrounds, two different worldviews, you're coming together. So that one, there's already some issues that you're going to have naturally. To now pile on that, on top of that, you now add cultural issues and the family issues and people insulting one spouse, and then your parents are not seeing eye to eye with your spouse, or you are not seeing eye to eye with your in-laws. Just watch out. Just watch out, especially if you notice that your cultures don't align. Let people just be. And I always say it. I don't blame. Say, oh, Igbo people are bad. No, they are who they are. You went to marry them, so you are also who you are, and every culture has its own issues. But some cultures are just stagnant, and if you find out that one of the cultures where the person you are liking or loving is from that place, you should think about it twice. Because you know what I've learned from people from the southeast, when it comes to marriage, it's not so much emotion as it is tactical and strategic. We read in the book by Joe Igbokwe, marriage is a political tool. He wrote it in his book. He wrote how you could get political power. Maybe that's where, maybe what would I say? How do I say this? That could be the dream. Of course, it's not the reality where we are, but that's their own dream. And I'm not here to say, oh, change your dream. I don't change. My point is, if you're Yoruba, don't bother thinking you're going to change anybody. 1 second. Roy, I'm handkerchief one, sorry. So, handkerchief. One will do. All right. Ọkọ̀ burúkú ṣe fẹ́ àná burúkú ò ṣe ni. Yeah, so please remember this thing so that you won't have to avoid stories that touch. I just wanted to read that because I found it was personal, and it was also painful. Imagine your children are growing up and someone is telling your children, your mother's people are traitors. How exactly do you want that child to think of Yoruba people? All because of marriage. Oh, thank you, Lord. All right, let's get into. Sorry. All right, let's get into some of the things that happened in the last 24 to 48 hours, and then we will um, get into the conversation today. So today we're starting a new series. I want to see how quickly we can, go through this. Apologies, good afternoon, because we've done this before. We talked about the war before, but maybe no, no, we've done it before, but we can look at it from another perspective. But so if in case you were here yesterday, somebody was on YouTube asking questions, and at some point the person asked me about the war and about Aburi, and I said it's important to answer those questions, but not to rush it. We're gonna have a session for it, or at least, or let's just say a series, or at least a session to discuss it. So that's what we'll be doing today. But before we get into that, let me just play some of the video. I'm going to play a couple of videos, well, more than a couple to be honest, just to get us started. So remember how we do this. When we gather, we have the news, we discuss it for a bit, people come up, and then we take everybody down, then we get into the books. All right. Let's start with a statement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which I find it very, very inspiring, the way he answered the question from Babajide Otitoju. And then, of course, what's happening now based on the concept, the idea of demand and supply, and why that is better than price control. I find it very interesting, but I also like the way things are playing out today. So please take a listen. All right. So, all right. So, if you had watched that interview with the president, you might have left with the idea that he's not compassionate enough. He's not feeling the pulse of the people. He's supposed to tell they're supposed to be able to control the price in the market, prices of goods, prices of you know food and things like that. A lot of people have been talking about price control and everything, and he kept talking about demand and supply. But let me tell you what I've seen in my own, you know, what I think is happening right now in Nigeria. I think that Nigerians are Nigeria's worst enemies. So how do you get money? You get money from the federal government, loans to help you. The idea basically is for you to farm, rice, harvest, package, and sell. You got loans from the government, but now that you're in business, what you're selling is more expensive than what is being imported. It in they'll use brands. Foreign, one second, Roy, you're distracting me. Please go inside. They'll use foreign brands. They'll put the rice inside, bags with foreign logos and everything, and then sell it to you and say, oh, it's foreign. The idea basically is that whatever government policies come out, for the most part, we are the ones who frustrate the policies. But now they've opened the borders, and now demand and supply is working, and now nobody can claim, you know, if you like, sell it at a normal price. If you like, hold it because you are the king of rice. Everybody will be all right. Anyway, there's a controversy going on social media right now. This one is not about politics. We're coming back to politics in a second. But this one is about a song that is, you know, out now. It's like the rave of the moment. And I'm actually happy for Gaze Baba, especially because he's been in this game for a while. And so he put out a song, a remix actually. I think they did the original song last year, but this one came out earlier this year. Is I have decided, or no, last week. So a pastor decided to share his opinion. I don't usually do religious stuff. I want to talk about this one. So just take a listen. All right. I just wanted to say that, like I say, Jesus has some deputies that he forgot to tell us we are supposed to report to on earth. While it's important for people to not go overboard. I think some people are just hypocrites and Puritans who have no idea what they're talking about. So if you're a Christian and you like that song, please keep dancing to it. Somehow you get the message. It doesn't have to be slow for it to be God. And I think some people are actually very slow. That's why they just prefer slow songs. I like slow songs, but it's not because I'm slow, it's because I'm, for whatever reason, other than being slow. But I don't know why there's a controversy about this song. And I'm actually happy that the song is trending. Just a little, let me just read some numbers. I know it's not by numbers, but it's by numbers. No, you know what? Oh, God doesn't care about numbers, but I think He actually does. Why? Because you read the Bible, they're always talking about the people that were added. There were 12 disciples, they became 70, there was 120, there was 400 witnesses, and there was 3,000 people, and there was 5,000. They're always mentioning numbers. So all these hypocrites. Anyway, Gaze Baba and Lawrence Oyo's No Turning Back has broken the record for the biggest weekly views by a song on YouTube, Nigeria. A week after its release, it recorded 1.54 streams, sorry, 1.54 million streams in its first week, surpassing Davido's Funds featuring Odumodu Black and Chike at 1.31 million. It's a gospel song and it has shattered the record held in the past by one of the biggest global Afrobeat artists from this part of the world. On Spotify, it has about 417,000 streams. It was number 1 on YouTube, number 2 on Spotify, number 6 on Boomplay, number 7 on Shazam, number 18 on Apple Music. This is the first time that this is happening for gospel music, but yet you have some Christians who think that they are assistant in Jamaica, just a bunch of clowns. Anyway, if you're a Christian, enjoy the music. If you're not a Christian, please stream it. It's good. It's actually good music on its own. It has fantastic message. And yeah, people may be dancing to it, but yeah, somehow the message will get in there. All right, moving on from religious matters. I don't want to stay on that for too long. This is something, by the way, I don't like extremism either. I don't like people just throwing caution in the wind and saying nothing matters. But at the end of the day, I think some people are just, I've always said this, there's a far right and there's a far left. The best place to walk is in the middle of the road. Any other thing will take you to the extremes. All right, this is from Arise News. Interaction between Rufai and the Minister of Works, David Umai. Please take a listen.
his reign as the king of Ife. The king for inventing glass and producing iron.
All right. I just wanted to play that. I think what I like about it was actually the very first thing. But when people keep saying cost per kilometer, I think there's a mistake we also make in all these things. So number one, I'm not an engineer. And it's important to understand the fact that you cannot be an expert in all things. You should have knowledge of everything, but not like you're an expert in all things. But from the little I know, say you have maybe what he's looking for is average, like what's the average cost. So, for instance, terrains are different. The topography of different places will determine cost. I think I don't know why they didn't. I think there was no time, so they stopped him. Would have loved to hear that, but there was a lot. There's a longer engagement that the minister had with the press, where he talked about the breakdown of cost, and he was just reading it out for about 20 minutes, which I find very fantastic, by the way. But I just wanted to have us hear what's happening and what they've been able to achieve yesterday. Meanwhile, today is we're having something for Biafra. So I think today's topic is actually apt, considering that some people are celebrating something. Anyway, moving on. Something from Similai Fubara. Please listen. It's long, but just to listen to the part, I don't know if you heard what he said. There's no reason why there won't be peace between me and my Oga. Yeah, it's good to learn your lessons fast. All right, let's move on. I mean, you know what that means basically. Apparently, people learn sometimes from experience, and I hope that we don't have to experience everything in order to learn. But that's the governor of River State, and I really hope that he's able to settle his issues with the FCT minister. And yeah, it is what it is. Somebody put this on social media. I found it funny. I'm going to play it just for comic relief before we move on to other serious matters. Like I said, it was just comic relief. Kind of like the China went to China bit. All right, moving on to serious matters. Immigration arrest fleeing native doctor linked to ritual killings, and that was done near Seme border. The Nigerian Immigration Service has arrested Obi Levi Obieze, a herbalist, over alleged involvement in abduction, kidnapping, and ritual killings. Let me just stop to quickly say something. Nigerians, I think you need to understand what it means to be a herbalist. A herbalist is somebody who uses herbs, as medicine for people, right? These people are not herbalists. These are witch doctors, so to speak, or witch, whatever the demonic thing you want to give to the person. I'm not even a herbalist, and I feel offended. Anyway, Obieze, popularly known as Levi Obu Onyeka, is a popular herbalist in Umojo village in Ishaku community of Ezeagu local government area of Enugu. Recently, videos and pictures showing gory images of corpses in a sewage pit at an uncompleted building allegedly owned by Obieze began trending on social media. Vigilantes and security operatives were said to have discovered the pit in an uncompleted building allegedly owned and used by Obieze as a shrine. The vigilantes were on the lookout for a 13-year-old girl who was abducted in the community on Tuesday. A statement released by Daniel Undukwe, Enugu police spokesperson, on Wednesday said The herbalists fled the community after vigilantes and security operatives busted the uncompleted buildings. The operation also led to the arrest of 3 male suspects connected to the crime, namely Uche Kingsley Agumba, age 33, Ilon Onyedikachi, age 36, and Ejike Oduwapa, aged 38, Ndukwe said. The prime suspect, identified as High Chief Ivan Ẹkáàbọ, nicknamed Eziani, and Ideplay Show, a native doctor and prominent member of the community, fled the scene and is currently at large. During the rescue, 2 decomposing bodies, 1 male, 1 female, were discovered buried in a concrete sealed pit within an uncompleted building owned and used as a shrine, and heinous criminal activities by the fleeing prime suspect. They said a statement on Thursday by Akinshola Akimabi, NIS spokesperson, said the herbalist was arrested at the Gbaji checkpoint along Badagry Seme Road while attempting to flee Nigeria on a motorcycle. Akimabi said the immigration is currently collaborating with the police for the handing over of the suspect. Alright, terrible stuff. Yeah, terrible things. I don't say anything on that matter. Tinubu has appointed Yakubu Dogara as the chairman of a newly created federal agency, NGCC. We can get more details from that. The same Fubara, in that same meeting where we were talking about his Oga, also said President Tinubu came in at the right time and salvaged a worse situation while he was talking about the emergency rule. He says that the emergency rule saved Rivers State. Governor Zulum offers scholarships to children of CJTF members, that's Civilian Joint Task Force. The members were killed in the IED blast. A few more things. Okay, I already read the Nigerian Immigration Service Lagos State Command has handed over notorious crime suspect Obi Levi Obieze to the Lagos State Police Command for further investigation. INEC has scheduled the governorship elections in Ekiti State and Osun States for Saturday, July 20 and Saturday, August 8, 2026, respectively. Katsina State government shut down 22 private health training institutions for failing to meet basic academic and professional standards. Alright, I want to spend some more time on news today because of the topic. The topic itself is a big topic. But just a couple more stuff that bring people up here. Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa has said the Nigerian Armed Forces, in collaboration with other sister security agencies, have made significant progress in addressing insecurity in different regions of the country in order to curb food insecurity. The federal government has officially launched Project Sprout, Special Palliative Relief of University Transportation, an initiative aimed at providing cleaner and more affordable transport options in Nigeria's tertiary institutions. And I think it's going to be based on the CNG. No, it's not fuel. CNG, based on CNG. The vehicles will be using CNG, so this is really good. It's good news especially for students in universities. President Bola Tinubu has signed a new executive order aimed at reducing project costs, boosting investment, and increasing revenue in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, has been named Central Bank Governor of the Year at the 2025 African Banker Awards held in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Nigeria First policy will take us back to industrialization. Minister of Interior. Yesterday, they had a youth conference. It was on Channels TV Youth Forum, and it was actually quite nice. I saw a couple of people talking, Minister of ICT, Minister of Youth. But there's something here from the Minister of Youth Development, Oyedele Lawande. He says their school fees abroad are more expensive than what we have in Nigeria. Olubunmi Otunjojo says President Bola Tinubu's government is taking decisions that should have been taken decades ago. Alright, I think that's about it, but there's one more thing. It's a bit long, that's why I waited for it to be the last thing. I'm just going to play part of it. It's an exchange at the Senate conversation currently about the tax bill. So let me first read something about it. Today, 28th May, that was yesterday, 2 days ago, the Senate and the House of Representatives adopted the harmonized versions of the four tax reform bills. The bills are now set to be forwarded to Mr. President for assent. So let me just play a little from what happened in the House, and then we can move on. We bring people up. If you want to be part of the conversation while this is playing, please send your request. I'll bring you up. Thank you very much. Please take a listen. It's a very long thing. There's a lot of stuff in there, but I think the good part is that they are harmonizing, essentially taking stuff from the one from House of Representatives and one from the Senate. So we're hoping that we'll have full details. Maybe before the end of today, I'll be able to get the document, and then maybe if not today, probably next week, we just have a conversation about it, just to understand what this whole thing is about. We talked about it a while back, but that was a long time ago. Apparently, what they're working on right now is a bit different from the original one because a lot of debates have gone on that. But before we go, let me just play something I found. I find it very heartbreaking, but I do want to talk about it. I think it's important to do so. So let's start first with a letter that was written by the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. This was on 28th May. It was a letter that was sent out, invitation for clarification regarding online content related to alleged sexual offenses involving minors. They wrote this to Darlington Okoye. Let's speak Darlington. Dear Mr. Okoye, we write to formally invite you to appear before the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTI, in respect of certain video materials recently circulated online, including but not limited to a particular Instagram video wherein you allegedly made statements admitting to having engaged in sexual acts with an underage girl. Additional archived videos now in circulation similarly contain admissions and degrading commentary concerning minors. These actions, if substantiated, constitute offenses under the 1 Trafficking in Persons Enforcement and Administration Act 2015, Cybercrime Prohibition Prevention Act 2015. We are hereby invited to appear in person for an interview as regards the alleged actions on Friday, 30th of May 2025 by 9 a.m. at the NAPTIP headquarters, 2028 Dalaba Crescent, Busquets Zone 5, Abuja FCT. Kindly bring along any legal representation or documents you may consider relevant. Now, this is good because at least they're doing something about it, but what I don't like was his response. And again, guys, Nigerians, we've got to do better. This is sad. So please take a listen to the response.
X mode.
Yeah. Go north now. Go north where 70-year-old they marry 11 years old. Mr. Activism. Go north. No. Maybe you carry am for head. Activism my head. Go north. Where 70-year-old men they marry 11. I saw one 2021. 12. Hey, a child married to 50-something years old. When I know they Igbo girl and for South she get. You want blow or not? Yes. You think regular they climb? Regular is pharmacist, bus driver, conductor, regular. Yes. You think regular they climb? Climbing is for extraordinary, irregular. Those willing to do what others are now willing to do. I no go sell my market again because they follow me. What the fuck I want to do with your fellowship? When VDM was locked up, I mind my business. I never put my mouth because I know say his whole content is insult, attaching himself in people's business. When I'm ready for this front and back, bring it on, B. Because I know the other Nigerians where they fear you. Remove my name from your mouth, broski. Me and you no get beef. Don't make us have beef. Remove my name from your mouth so that we don't have beef. I don't. The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayers is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. The fruit of service is peace. Right? That's the fruit of everybody in this world. That's what we all want. But you got to do it with silence.
All right. So naturally, if the way human beings work is, if somebody says you've done something wrong, instead of you to say, okay, this I did it wrong, I'm right, I'm sorry, whatever. What you now do is look at that other person. They're doing the same thing. In fact, they're doing worse than I am doing. Therefore, leave me alone. Oh, sorry about that. So I'm saying, okay,
15 self, if I know say 15 will bring me this, I take.
Roy, you use bathroom and finish the water I put there and God let the place dirty, Abi. You can't roll any. You did yesterday. All right, I see. What people are hoping I was serious. So I saw people are writing in the comment section, and someone says, "Oh, it's true," but something happens to them. So think about it. Imagine you see somebody in your house who maybe stole something, and then you catch him and you take him to the police, and the person says, "Oh, but there's a politician that stole money sometime. What have they done to him?" So what are you going to do based on that? When you say it's true, though, there are different rules for the malams. That's not the point. Number one, it wasn't even about consensual relationship. Did the malam say they got married to the girls or they raped those girls? Number two, were the malams married to those people based on their own culture? And when we tell people that cultures affect the way laws play out, people say, no, it doesn't matter. I know the constitution. Okay. Their culture allows certain things. I mean, They use Sharia for those things. If you don't understand how they're able to get away with things, maybe you should become a Muslim and then maybe you can, get married to one and then sleep with one. Not that you sleep with one and then say, but there's somebody else getting married to someone younger. It's a different frame of reference. It's a different context. 60 years marrying 6 years old. That's not on me. It's on them. That's their culture. And it's a different argument. You can have a session to say, okay, you can even have a conversation in Nigeria. 6-year-old married 6-year-old is too much, it's too far. And by the way, there's nothing cool about it as far as I'm concerned. But it's a different argument. Maybe when they catch you for doing something wrong, you can't remember to say, oh, but I know somebody who's also doing something wrong. Does that mean that what you did, does that make it right? Believe it or not, in their own culture, generally, it's culture based on religion. Hausa culture is not like that originally. The only reason it's like that is because of religion. See, the reason you, for instance, will not think like that is not necessarily because of religion, it's actually because of your culture. It's actually religion. Let's not joke with ourselves. It's religion. The reason you, as a Yoruba man, the reason you will not do that is not because of the religion, it's because of your culture. Hausa culture did not have that originally. It was religion. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning. But I don't want to make that the topic of today's conversation. And that's why we're always saying that the way Yoruba Muslims will interpret certain things will be different on many cases, on many issues, by the way. You hear people now whipping up hadiths. Meanwhile, you will be saying, oh, it's Quran, it's Quran. The person says, in this hadith, is this hadith. Before you know it, you'll just be made to look as if you're not even a good Muslim. I've seen those conversations, but the point is that whatever it is that they are doing, based on their religion and their culture in the north, is acceptable in that society. It's different from somebody just coming out and say, I've slept with this, I've slept with that, I've slept with this. You know the funny thing, and this is the crazy part, even in the north, if you say I've slept with this, I've slept with that, they'll still deal with you. Because the difference between what they are doing and what this one is doing is that they get married. Although I don't like the fact that they're getting married to underage people, but they get married to them and then sex. Not that they have sex and then, but it's not acceptable that you just sleep with young people. I don't think you get what I'm saying. They are not sleeping around with young kids. They are getting married to young children. Do I like the fact that they get married to young children? No. Is that acceptable in their culture? Yes. Is it the same thing as what this guy is saying? No. Even if it's the same thing, does it make it right for him? No. But guess what? It's not even the same thing. And it's what people do when they hate taking responsibility. You messed up. Just take it and move on. And, the clown is saying, oh, I should have said it was 12. It's amazing. Anyway, I'm going to bring people up so we have conversations and then we'll move on from there. I didn't want to talk about it at all, but just watching that video again while I was I was like, why is somebody this loud about being wrong? Like, people make mistakes, but at least. Anyway, everybody will be alright, hopefully. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, please send your request. Please let's do it now. We have only 10 minutes to do that. Anybody? Okay, I think everybody's fine. Portable suppose best second round remote. Alright. Okay, I think I have one. So please do me a favor. We have 1 minute. In the next 1 minute, if nobody comes up, once the person begins to speak, we just move on, please, so that because of time. I don't like it when people say, oh, the person says something, let me just quickly come up. Before you know it, we now begin to respond to response and all those things. So please try and understand. I'm going to bring up apologies. We're going to take 2 minutes from you. Anyone who wants to come up, please feel free to send your request. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Apologies. There's a lot of noise in the background, please. I'm Shall the making it? Can you even hear me? Can you hear me? Apologies, there's a lot of noise in the background. Can you please? Oh God, I don't want to make it about this thing, man. Let's not make it about this thing. Please round up, please. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. All right, let's go to Jadings, please. Good morning, brother. Jadings, there's a lot of noise.
So much change.
Jadings, please help us with the noise in the background, please. Okay, you know what? Okay, finish up. I'll just remove my earpiece. No, no, it's because it's in my ear. Just so continue. Maybe just me. It's probably too loud here or something.
Yes, politics needed to be done. It needed to be done, but these figures are getting extreme.
Thank you very much, my brother Javings. Thank you for your submission. I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much to you and to apologies for sharing. I think one more person. Hey, let's be doing this thing together. So just a quick one from Remy Guy, and then we'll move on. Uh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. 300 actually. So I don't have the new. Thank you very much for the question. I don't have the new. Sorry, I have to mute because of the feedback. I don't have the new document yet, so maybe before the end of today. But there was the proposed bill that was sent to the National Assembly. That was a couple of months ago. I think we talked about how the federal government wanted the sharing formula to look like, and of course, it's not going to be the same thing that you're going to have now because they would have debated it. They will have to argue over it. So I don't have that document yet. So perhaps before the end of today, I'll be able to lay my hands on it. And if I do, or when I do, I think I should be able to get it. So when I do, we'll have conversations on that. So I think that's probably the only thing I can say on that for now. But um, it's not. We'll never be able to give the money 100%. Even in the First Republic, we never kept all our money. Well, I think we kept all the taxes, but maybe not all the. Essentially, we sent part of the money to the center, whether it was from cocoa or from the cash crops or from the resources. So I don't know if that would ever happen. There will still be something that you have to send to the federal government as long as you're in the same nation. But the question will be the percentage, right? Like how much do people get to keep to themselves? Do regions get to keep to themselves? If we are able to reduce the percentage that leaves each region, then we would have, made a lot of progress. But if once I get my hands on it, I will, I'll let us know. Thank you very much for that. Where is she from? No, I think I've noticed it, but I don't know where she's from. And listen, everybody's biased. Um, so let me put it this way: I would talk more about like yesterday. I was talking about what's happening in Abia States, the kind of things that the governor is doing. I just want to look out for good news everywhere. However, I also think that when like what happened with that guy, I think it's good news for the girl that was rescued. So it's important to talk about it. But generally speaking, if she decides not to do that, I think that, see, there's a way they set up that station. The station is set up as, to the best of my knowledge, it looks like it's opposition station. I'll give an example. I put a video earlier today, excuse me, where Peter Odu was talking to Rufai. It was as if he was an owner in the place, right, the way he was talking, right? And it was like he couldn't be wrong, So whenever he speaks, there's a way he's handled. So you can already tell. I was talking to someone yesterday about TVC, the program on TVC, and the anchor was asking some very, very hard and tough questions about what Nigeria has achieved in the last 2 years. And I told the person beside me, I said, would you believe that this station is actually owned by Tinubu? And they're going so hard at it. And I think the reason they're doing that is because they want to be seen as not citing their principle, which makes a lot of sense. But I don't see that, for instance, in Arise. The only crazy part is that they tend to tell everybody that they are not biased. They are the most biased station that I have seen as far as this whether ethnic to the east or I mean, so the only person who is able to actually speak up sometimes, and even when he does, it becomes an issue, is Dr. Abati. He speaks on basic things, doesn't even try to insult anybody, but always catch a flag. Anyway, you'll be fine. They'll be all right. I think there are good people there. There are interesting people there. Everybody should keep doing their work. TBC will never make any sense to the majority of Nigerians. Sorry, sir. Yeah, majority of fools, not majority of Nigerians. Why do you guys just throw words around? TBC makes sense to people who think. And this is the funny thing. I watch Arise, I watch TVC, I watch channels, and I can tell who is joking. And for the most part, Arise jokes too much. You hear Rufai say he's doing analysis and be like, oh gal, oh gal. But I mean, everybody can do what they like. I can't fault their professionalism. I'm not in the best position to do that. Check their views and ratings. Arise is far ahead. Yes, now, have you not seen? Have you ever gone to the market and see a mad person in the market? Don't you think they have a lot of views? Mad people in the market have a lot of views. Doesn't mean they are saying anything that's smart. I'm not saying anybody is mad though. I'm just trying to tell you that perhaps that's not the way to judge that people will never see anything good about that person. All right. Thank you very much for being here. By the way, let me just make something clear. I watch Arise. I think it's a good channel. I just think that a lot of their hosts they pander towards LP, and it's too glaring. Like you can even, and let me tell you the reason I feel this way. So I grew up when, so under the military, the what's the word? How do I put it now? I mean, before independence. Sorry, before I said independence, before civilian rule, there's a way the news people conduct themselves. The only time you see them pushing is because they're mostly pushing against the junta. So maybe under whichever of the governors, they always want, or presidents, they want to, head of states rather, they want to antagonize them and do all those things. But generally speaking, since '99, the stance of journalists in Nigeria really is to be like an unbiased what's the word now? Umpire. So they're there to be like the voice of reason. They can criticize you, but you know where they stand, and where they stand is not on one. They're not on the side of any politician. They're just telling you what they really think about what you're doing. They can criticize you and stuff like that. But some of the ones that are coming up right now, I think it's mostly about who I believe in. For instance, if I see something that President Tinubu doesn't do right, for instance, when he did this fuel subsidy removal, and the floating of the naira. I had a problem with the timing, but I loved the policy. Thank you, Larry. The policy makes sense, right? The policies make sense, but the timing I had issues with. And when I had the platform, I talked about it. Like, but some people can never be wrong, but then they are the most objective. Everybody will be alright. Everybody knows what they're doing, and I hope everybody, I wish everybody the best. All right, let's move on to the topic now. Thank you very much for coming up, Remy Guy. And hey, why am I pressing this device? 1 second, guys. Oh, wait. No, 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 no. Oh, wait. 1 second, guys, please. Where's Ray? Hmm? Ẹkáàbọ. Ṣé dáadáa ni? So, just want to read some comments from what I'm seeing here. Many of us Igbos believe that the war was inevitable, as told us by Ojukwu, or that we were defending ourselves against the world. This, of course, is not true. I just want to read some of the comments on some of the videos I put out there. It says, many of us Igbos believe that the war was inevitable, as told us by Ojukwu, or that we were defending ourselves against the world. This, of course, is not true. We even believe that Gowon, who was engaged to an Igbo girl, was our enemy and hates Indigo. That was how Ojukwu brainwashed all of us to hate Gowon. What I like about what you are doing is using documented accounts to tell the true story of events is that hopefully it will help my people to free themselves from Ojukwu's high dose of propaganda and lies which we have been fed. Ojukwu was a highly educated and revered person in Igbo land. Perhaps only two people, Zik and Mbadiwe, were more educated than Ojukwu. Therefore, no one could challenge or stand up to Ojukwu and his ambition to rule. It's because of people like this that I'm always very careful, because it's just that they are the exception to the rule. Majority of them are cursed and they curse me, but it is well. But that was from Henry, by the way. He comes there every time. We don't agree on everything, but at least we can have conversation based on materials, not based on what Ojukwu said. That's how you know that the person is actually quite serious. So please, let me take everyone down. Let's start out, please. We're on 50K. Thank you very much, everyone. This is 3 o'clock, so we are right on time. 3 o'clock. We're going to get to the conversation now. Thank you very much, Jadings and Remy Guy, for being here. Please power tap. Thank you. All right, for those of us on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here. Please share the live with your contact. Let's try and get more people to see the live. We're about to dive into the deep end, so to speak. Today's topic now, data is expensive. You're a big boy now. You're a big man, self. Which one is boy? You're a big man. Who cares about data? Money na water. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? These things don't bother you now. Stop acting like we don't know. We don't know that money na water. All right. Don't mind Obina. Obina is a rich man. He's always wearing singlets. He's all those rich things. They wear singlet, but our money they inside pockets. Forget. We know these things. All right, but I'm glad you're here, and thanks for being here. Let me just say this before we get into the conversation. The things we're going to talk today, because of the time, so some of which you've heard before, some of which you may not have heard before, some of it may come across as hateful, but it's only because you don't like what I'm saying. It's not because I'm making anything up or being hateful. So just to be clear, the conversation is not about hate towards anyone. I like to do all this caveats, put the caveats out there, because when anything starts, me not be like say we can't person to this one, so we all understand. All right, so we've been talking about what led to the coup, why we struck, which is of course based on the that they make. I'm looking at different other materials to understand, his own point of view. But it's a bit different from what led to the war. And in understanding what led to the war, of course, we can't just start where a lot of people start. People like to start with, well, something happened in the north, therefore, we declared Biafra. It's not really as easy as that. I think that, to be honest, you really want to look at what caused the war itself. As far as I'm concerned, there are many issues, but the first one would be the very foundation of what we call Nigeria, how the country was set up, right? That is not just the reason for the war, it's also the reason for today, or one of the reasons for what we're going through today, and one of the reasons for the war as well. And what I mean by that basically is that we are strange bedfellows, we're people who were brought together. I was watching a supposedly an educated person, a lecturer in university, saying something like, and I can't believe I heard the professor say this, but that's why I say you have to also be able to think critically and not just take everything everybody says hook, line, and sinker. Sorry, 1 second. Mr. Martin, we're going to have to do this later, please. I'll bring you up much later in the evening once we're done with the session. Everybody will come up, please. Thank you. All right, so I was saying that, and by the way, it's good to see you, Mr. Martin, not Meta, but I'll bring you up later. The very foundation, and the professor was saying something to the effect that if the Igbos had not come to Nigeria to put us together, what happened would have happened, we would have come together. And I was like, who is this person? Because maybe they thought they're, and by the way, when people write these things and think they're trying to unite people by saying we will eventually come together like that, they think what they're saying makes sense. But I'm sorry, I don't really care that the person who said is a PhD holder. It doesn't make sense, and I'll tell you why. Even if Nigeria were to come together and become a nation like it is without the British, it will still not be the way it is right now. It would have happened through conquest. In other words, a person or a group of people would have conquered others, like it happened in China, by the way. It also happened in England, right? You would conquer people and then you swallow them in and then create your structure. So your structure becomes the structure of the space. The Angles and Saxons were never in Britain. It was through wars and through conquest that we define the landscape of the space. That's what could have happened if people had said, oh, we would have eventually had Nigeria. It will not happen by people forcing it together. And so one of the major problems that we have is that we were brought together and we still have not questioned this so-called union. For instance, there's a particular gentleman who writes on every video where I talk about, who we are as a people and says things like, secession is treasonable offense. He just talks all this nonsense. And I remember telling him that you've got to really calm down with this thing. There's no sane person who would have a problem with questioning the status quo. Like, if you are sane and you're talking about the structure of Nigeria, and people say to you, and I've said this several times, we have to discuss the concept of indissolubility as contained in the Constitution. We've got to be able to discuss it. There's nothing called indissolubility. Just because Zeke said it in 1954 doesn't mean the rest of us must begin to live by it. He called it indivisibility and the perpetuity of the union, or the indissolubility as you find it in the 1999 Constitution. We've got to be able to talk about it. In other words, I'm not saying break the country, but I'm saying discuss stuff. This is the basis of our unity. This is why we want to be together. This is what we want to gain from it. And the reason I'm spending time on this is because I think it's the very foundation. We were not supposed to be together. But we are together now, and that's fine. So now that we are together, how do we move forward? How do we structure ourselves? Must we live according to what Oyinbo's did? Can we not think for ourselves? Those are the questions that I think would help us to answer the questions that, the question that we have on our minds about this. So first of all, I think the way we were brought together was a problem. And in the way we were brought together was also, there was an inherent fear that different people had, and also the ridiculous ambitions that some people also had. Let me give you an example. The Fulani and Yoruba fought several wars. Some they won, Many they lost. And then, of course, the decisive ones, they lost. Whether it was at Jalumi or the Oshogbo War. But you see, that was done. Only for the British to now bring together people. Hello, Solo 28, good to see you. People who had fought and everybody had already known that this is your boundary, this is where you stay. Now say, look, all of you are now in the same country. Nobody asked for that. Then you have a people, for instance, from different other regions who probably would never have met these other people, but now they are moving into their spaces and they are doing stuff. And the way they are moving makes you become afraid, for instance, of domination. And to make it worse, some of them were bold enough to actually utter those words. There are words that were credited, for instance, to the Sardauna about the Fulani domination, but it's a rumor. I've searched every word, and that's why I don't quote it often. I've never even quoted it on this platform because I have no source for it. But I've heard it several times. The idea of dipping the Quran in the water, in the ocean. You hear it, right? But that's a rumor. But there's one that's not a rumor. That's the one by Charles Onyema when he said the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. When people say things like that, it begins to get people riled up, and that will begin to sow seeds of discord that might eventually lead to something really terrible. So those things were already there simmering even before, Ojukwu did whatever Ojukwu did. So number one was a structural thing. There are people that had different evolution or civilizations, as it were, or cultural evolutions who were forced together. So while some, for instance, have been able to build complex structures in their own spaces, and they've been able to, work with different people and work with different races, and they've been able to explore different options. Some have not even been able to do that for themselves. And one of the things that I don't like to do, I don't like to say, okay, these people are not like that. We are different. So one of the things I like to highlight is that what we have amongst us is not so much about who is better than who, or how different we are. And the reason it becomes who is better than who is when the person who doesn't have as much as the other person begins to tell that other person that they're the same. That disrespect is what forces someone like me, for instance, to highlight that, listen, I like to say you're good because that is respectful, that's what respectful people do. However, since you are crossing your lines, may I just tell you that you are uncultured and you're underdeveloped. That is actually not so much an insult, but to highlight your own issues as a group. And you have that in different places in Nigeria. And there are some people, for instance, I was saying in the 90s, where they were discovered not to be wearing clothes. It was NYC people that went there, and then clothes got to them. If you talk to them today, they will not tell you that they're the same people with Yoruba people. You don't do that, because everybody knows exactly when people got on that hill. And there's a particular place they call, I don't want to mention the name of the place, but you know the place is something hills. People went there and gave them clothes and everything. So if I meet people from there, for instance, they're my brothers. I don't have to tell them that, oh, you are less than me. It's just the way that they evolved. However, what's happening? Sorry, I think my network just went off for a second. However, assuming they come to me and tell me, oh, I'm better than you, all these Yoruba people, what do you even have? Then I remind them that, Oga, you just started wearing clothes 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We've been doing this thing for centuries. But in reality, I think the real issue is not so much that one is better than the other. It's just that we are so different, but we are assuming that we are one, and we are forcing ourselves into the same mold. And the crazy thing about the mold is that some people they've already outgrown that mold centuries ago. You are just trying to fit yourself into something that you have created for yourself today. So that, for instance, is a major issue as it has to do with what led to the war. Of course, there's also the part of domination, like I mentioned earlier, especially in civil service, for instance, whether I was in federal civil service or the northern civil service. People have mentioned several times how the Sardauna was a bigot or a tribalist for doing what he did, what he called the northernization policy and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that if you notice that people are overrunning your space in your own land, if you have sense as a leader, you will find a way to ensure that your people are able to actually gain upper hand. You send them to school, they know the disadvantages that is allowing them to not be able to occupy those spaces, which was what he was doing. So are you for one Nigeria or prefer Yoruba nation? At the moment, I'm for one Nigeria. And the reason is because I have thought long and hard about it. Let me put it this way. My ideal is a Yoruba nation. But what I think we can have right now, it became one Nigeria. And the reason I always talk about one Nigeria is because, by the way, I play the anthem every evening. The reason is because I don't know a pathway out of the country that doesn't involve violence as at now. So maybe if I'm able to figure out something, I will then change my stance. Interestingly, I went to the bookshop today. There's a book I heard about a person who had, push a particular agenda. So I went to get his book. He's a fantastic person. I've heard him speak. I want to read and see where it's coming from. Maybe I'll be able to, build something off of it. But personally speaking, I think that there's a way to thrive because, listen, there has to be a way. If I now explore all these options and then there's no other thing, of course, I would not mind having my own Yoruba nation. But you see, the truth of the matter is that the structure we have is defective. Nigeria is not the only multi-ethnic nation on earth. And it's not all of them that had to break to become successful and prosperous. Many of them had to just understand the people and the structure, and then, so for instance, you look at Nigeria and then you look at the uniqueness of Nigeria and then you create a structure that fits that uniqueness, then you're fine. And I'm not saying it will be easy, it will be difficult because it's something new for a lot of us, but that's where we're going. That's not today's topic. I'm going to move away from that, but so that's where we're going, where if we have a structure that works, that should work. If that structure doesn't work, but the question is, we've not even tried to do it. So that's the thing about me. Like I want to have a system where, like what you have in Switzerland or in Germany or in Belgium, people have done it. And that's why I say all this thing about, oh God, when people say, let me tell you something. Years ago, I was in some conversations. People say, we want to break Nigeria. We cannot. That's why we're not speaking Yoruba, because we are speaking Yoruba. If we are in our own country, we'll be able to speak Yoruba. I told the person, you are not serious. You are not responsible. You're not teaching your children Yoruba. You're shouting. The reason we don't speak Yoruba is because we are in one Nigeria. It's because you are not serious. There's a program my kids we watch every day, every other day. My family we watch Maso Imbo. Many of the people that even watch the show are not even Nigerian. People watch it. We speak language. The thing is, there are so many things you can still do within the country. All this thing of we cannot move unless we get out of the country. I'm like, really? We've not even tried. That's the sad part. We haven't tried. If we try it and it fails, I'll support it. But like I said, that's my stance for now. Can it change tomorrow? Absolutely. I might just go around, think about something, and if I have answers that that can persuade me. And I've listened to many arguments over the years. I don't even bother listening to any anymore. But there's a book I bought today, and I'm just going to settle down with it this weekend and just see where the man is coming from. Maybe I might learn something that will help me, in my own evolution as far as thought is concerned. But for now, I think that if we have a structure that aligns with our uniqueness, we can grow, we can do well. It's not be perfect, but is there even a perfect nation? Even if the funny thing, there's something happening on Twitter right now. It just makes me laugh. Just makes me laugh. It's a bunch of clowns, saying we're Yoruba, but this town is greater than this town, and your town can never take something on this town. I'm like, it's the same thing all over again. I won't say more than that, but it's just funny. That one is spiritual. We cannot allow it. It's not a little vaccination. Okay. Everybody will be alright. So, but I think it should be, personally, I think that's my preferred option, to have a separate nation, because why not? The ones who have nations are a little better than us. However, it's not as easy as people think. Like, people have to really think about it. It's complex. See what's happening in South Sudan. It is complex. What are you going to do to all the people who are disturbing us right now? Are we going to reject everybody? Like, how do we really, that thing of if we don't do this, we'll not make progress. What exactly is the plan? And that's the crazy part. There's no plan. There's no plan. And I'm sorry, I can't just be saying, hey, what's the plan? Imagine my child wakes me up in the night and says, Daddy, this idea I even sure talking about, explain to me and let me understand. And then I don't have anything to say. tattoo. And by the one, people say, do something, people just say, this is why you should do it, this is why you should do it. Okay, I get why now. I get it. Now tell me how we're going to do it. That how is what I've been working on. I've been working on that how for about 5 years. I've been working about that on that how. That the second one about restructuring. I found the how. I found that how, and that how is beautiful, and I think it can work. This other one, I'm still working on it. Once I find it, I'll probably change my mind. But I think it's the answer is somewhere. I've just not found it yet. All right. Let's go on. Hopefully, I find it over the weekend because of the book I bought. Obina. Oh, I've already spoken about it before. How we can work on this structure. Let's finish this word thing and then we'll talk about it. How we can get it because I think we can. I think there's a way to do it. And it's easier to. Let me say this: just because I know how doesn't mean it's going to work that way, but at least I have a plan. It's better to have a plan than to have nothing and just be going. When people say, "Where are you going?" You are not going anywhere. But when you get there, how will you know when you arrive? That's the issue. So at least, or how do you even plan to get there? Show my motto ni, show our ring ni, show our phone ni. Wá lè fẹ́ wọ mọ́tò kọ́ lọ́n wá ṣe ìyanu o kí plane wá dé o kó wá fò kó wá débẹ̀ kó yára débẹ̀ ju bó ṣe gbèrò lọ kó tó kúrò nílé. In case you don't understand Yoruba, I'm saying that let's say you're planning to go somewhere and you want to drive and somehow you meet somebody and instead of not even drive, maybe you want to board a cab or a bus and somehow you're able to get on a plane, so you're able to get there faster. But at least when you left the house, you were thinking of getting into a bus. You are on your way somewhere. Not just that you're at home just shouting, I want to move, I want to move. Okay, move. And let me tell you the reason I'm always talking like this. And I'm sorry this is not today's topic, but I'm just going to say something. The reason I'm always talking like this is because I know what disillusionment can cause. When people are told something and promised something again and again and again, and they've been told about that thing, after a while they will get disillusioned if they don't get that thing fulfilled. We have to take responsibility sometimes as leaders, even if it's just a small group that you're leading somewhere. And I do have a small group that looks up to me. If, for instance, I'm doing something and then I'm saying, "Oh, we'll do this," at some point they'll say, "Okay, what are you going to do?" You have to come up with debate ideas on your barren. No, I'm not. No. Yeah, not here. Nah, not here. No, brother. Nah. Nope. Thank you for the idea, but no, I don't. I've been part of those things. It always ends in a terrible way. Everybody is always just in their feelings. Anyway, I think it's a great idea, but when I find this stuff, I was saying something before I read that stuff. Yeah. So if you've been told about something year in, year out, one day you might people insult and criticize Nnamdi Kanu. What you see there is a person who promised something and has to find a way to deliver that thing. That's what you are saying. If you have to harm the people, you harm them because you have to deliver. You've been telling them all this thing, all this while. You've got to deliver. Or else they'll move on to the next happening thing. That's how movements work. No plans, no progress, nothing, they'll move. And then once that happens, anything can happen. You can have ESN, you can have UGM, you can have proliferation of arms and ammunition. It's a deep thing. Don't promise what you can't deliver. Or at least what you don't know how to deliver. And this thing, I've asked that question for many years. So now I'm asking myself, how do you think we can get it? Until then, let's get back to this topic. All right. We're going to start with a book by a man called Neil Graham Douglas. The man was the Attorney General of the Eastern Region under Odumegwu Ojukwu. He wrote a book in 1968. The book is called Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion. Obina, stop this thing. INEC is not your answer, trust me. Everybody will lose and work on stuff. You will lose and be asking INEC to do electoral reforms. What reforms are you looking for? You should put ballots in every house. Anyway, we'll be fine. Thank you very much for writing in the comment section. Now let's get to it. Let's get to it. Ojuku's Rebellion and World Opinion by Dr. Nebel Graham Douglas was a former Attorney General for Eastern Nigeria. This paper was published in 1968. I think it's a very important document to help us understand how these things work. All right. Now, when you look at the war, so let me just start from the introduction, then I'm going to say a few things, then we'll get into some of the reasons. So I already told you what I consider to be the primary reason is our structure. The way we're put together is a problem. People, for instance, don't know how to move in a space like Nigeria, and you still see it from the way people talk today. The things that people said, the visions they had, the ambitions they had, and the way they moved will make people begin to have issues with them. So once you get it that the primary problem is the structure, then we can build on the other things that people actually now did. Much has been said and written about the Nigerian Civil War and its antecedents. Many observers and audiences have already taken their positions on the conflict, and some have been very vocal in expressing their sympathies. I cannot pretend I cannot pretend to be able to bring about any change of attitudes now by the few things which I'm going to say. But it is just possible that as a person who was himself involved in the national crisis which led to the Civil War at its inception, as one who strove to bring about some understanding between Enugu and Lagos at that time, and as one for whom in the thick of the Civil War adversity created an opportunity of being drawn once again into some close quarters with those who were now rebels against their own country, and thus of knowing at first hand the strategy upon which the hope of the sustenance of the rebellion now rested, there may yet be facts in my possession which are either not known at all or only partially known to the world, and facts upon which world understanding may as yet be wrongly oriented. In the interest of all involved in the current conflict and of the world at large, it is my duty, at this the first opportune time, to place such facts at the disposal of others. What use they may make of such facts, it will be presumptuous of me to suggest, but I will have done some service to humanity if positive results ensue. This is my humble mission. Now, the reason I'm reading this is because Nebel Graham Douglas is from Abonema, he's from Rivers State. Not only was he and his people, not only were he and his people victims of the Biafran forces, but he used to work with Ojukwu himself. So I want to see how this goes and some of the things that he got as somebody working with that government. So let me first say something. It says, I am aware that I proceed to attempt to fulfill this mission against the background of a general prejudice in favor of the rebel regime, which is now the East Central State of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, on the part of a sizable population of the beguiled world and against the far-reaching products. Anyway, let's just move on to what I really want to talk about. All of that is introduction. Before we get into this, let me explain some things. Number one, I think one of the major issues as far as Biafra was concerned, apart from our structure and all those fantastic things, is actually the man's ambition. This is me answering the question that somebody asked me yesterday on YouTube. The primary reason for the Biafran war, the primary, apart from the structural issue, was the ambition of a man. People think it's the killings in the north. No, it's the ambition of one man. And I don't know if the lives that were lost worth that. Of course, I even know they're not worth. I mean, they're worth much more than his ambition. But it was about what he wanted to accomplish. And how do we know this? Because when you go through what happened from January 15, which we spent a lot of time discussing, January 15, January 16, how Emerson became the head of state, how, for instance, Emerson became the head of state and began to rule and things like that. The events that began to happen after that eventually led to what we're now facing now. So let me read something to you from this book, and then we'll go from 1 second. this is not the best book to start with. There's another book I want us to start with. I'll come back to this one because it's also very important. But I want to read something from Sheil Shadari's book. We've been reading a lot of Sheil Shadari. The book is called Beckon to Serve. But before this ambition, you talk about Ojukwu was a dedicated true Nigerian soldier. Really? Really? Define true. Don't worry, we'll get into some of these things. Don't worry. Yes, I'm the one saying it, but I can assure you I'm not just saying it. So why? I think the question will be, why am I saying what I'm saying? And I will let us know as the conversations go. And that's what I've said. When you read some of these things, sincerely, you just feel for the Southeasterners because this should not have happened. It should not have happened. Just 1 second, please, guys. I'm trying to look for a book. Sorry, a page rather. Let's say this. Okay, I think I saved it. Yeah. Oh God, where is this thing? I found it. So this is from Beckon to Serve. People will say things like, "Oh, it was the killings." It's not the killings, and then they will say things like, "Oh, it was the coup itself. It wasn't the coup alone." So let me put it this way: it's not like the coup was not part of the reason, or the killings did not lead to it, but the real issue is, see, anything can be used as an opportunity to fulfill an ambition. It doesn't mean that the events gave you the ambition. So you already had the plan to do whatever you wanted to do. You're just taking advantage of it. But just know that it was Ojukwu's ambition primarily. And I'm going to read some documents to you to prove that point. Right? We're going to get there. There are two stuff I'm going to read. Something from the book Douglas and the account of Anthony Nauro and the way Ojukwu moved. And then, of course, Jesus is Lord. There's a book I have to bring out now. Like, guys, just 10 seconds. That book is one of the most important books of this conversation. I forgot to bring it out. Just a second. A minute. A moment. All right. All right, thank you for staying tuned. If you're on TikTok, please keep tapping and sharing. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, please share the live. This is what I was talking about. This book has the minutes of the meetings actually between the Southern delegation and Ojukwu. So when I say things like, "Oh, they had meetings," what did they say at those meetings? You have the answers. Yes. So that book is very important. So let me explain some of the things that we'll get into in this conversation. Today is like an introduction into all of these things, but it's going to help us to understand it a bit more. So we already know that there was a crisis in '64, there was a coup that was planned, there was another crisis in '65, there was a coup that was planned before the crisis of '65. When you read the Nigerian Civil War by John de St. John and you read the Special Branch Report, what you discover is the fact that the coup that was executed in January of '66 was actually, the planning began in August of '65, right? And then the crisis in the West, the Wete, Operation Wete, was in the last quarter of '65. So again, it was not the crisis in the West that caused the coup. It was a catalyst, but it was not the cause of the events, right? But of course, it was part of the things that sped it up. But after that thing happened, there was a sense of calm across the nation. And you know what? As I'm talking right now, I have those books written down, but because of the change, they go from one thing to another. It's important for me to read waiting align with what I want to talk. So I'll just be going all over the place. So let's start with the book by A.H.M. Kirk Green. We'll read this one. This thing is long, so But please stay with me. It's going to be a fantastic session. Like always, hopefully it's going to be better than yesterday even. Yesterday was good. Yesterday was good. All right. So, I'm going to read. What is that thing? I want us to build it step by step, so I won't be going back and forth. You see here. One second though, I'm trying to get us into the material. Sorry guys, I'm opening the wrong volume. So there are two volumes of that book. I'm opening the wrong one. Where's the other one? Oh gosh. Finally, we're here. Thank you very much for your patience. Now we can get into this. So I'm going to be using the speech that I've used before in this sessions. That's the one by now, just to explain some of the things that we're discussing here today. All right. Historians will continue to debate whether what happened in Nigeria on 15th January 1966 was a rebellion, a coup, or a mutiny. Whatever it was, there was a change of government. The civil administration was removed from office. In the morning of that day, the Prime Minister of the Federation, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, the Federal Minister of Finance, Chief F. Okotiebo, the Premier of the Northern Region, Sir Ahmadu Bello, and the Premier of the Western Region, Chief S. L. Akintola, the second and third ranking officers in the Nigerian Army, Brigadier Malari and Brigadier Ademolegun, other senior officers, Colonel Shoda Inde, Colonel Pam, and others were seized and murdered. All of them had one thing in common: they were not Igbos. The Premier of the Eastern Region, Dr. Michael Okpara, the Premier of the Midwest Region, Chief Dennis Osadebe, the head of the Army, Major General Aguiyi Ironsi, the Federal Minister of Trade, Dr. K. Mbadiwe, and others in like position were not killed. They had one thing in common: they were Igbos. Excuse me. However, in the morning of that fateful day, and for some time afterwards, these facts were not generally known in the country. Please listen. Major General Aguiyi Ironsi established a federal military government after January 15th. That was on January 16th. We already discussed this, what happened on January 16th, from the other book by Shehu Shagari. The book is called Beckon to Serve. We talked about how they were called into the cabinet office, and how Ironsi took power. And again, just to be clear, power was not handed over voluntarily. Contrary to what Nwafọ Orizu said, it was actually taken at gunpoint, right? And you'll find that in the book by Shehu Shagari. You also find it in the statement by Chief Richard Akinjide. Please keep our tapping, keep sharing the live. We're going to have a bit. Sound volume is too low on YouTube. Okay, 1 second. Let me quickly fix that. Apologies to those on YouTube. Let's fix that in a second. Oh shoot, no, not this one. If you're YouTube, please let me know if it's better now. All right. If you're on YouTube, please let me know if it's better now. I apologize for the low volume, but I think it should be better now. I've done something to it. Okay, let's get into it. So please, YouTube, Facebook, let me know. And if it's not good, we'll see what else we can do to it to make it better. All right. Yeah, let's dive into it. However, in the morning of the fateful day and for some time afterwards, these facts were not generally known in the country. Major General Aguiyi Rossi established a federal military government after January 15. He promised to restore law and order, to put down what he described as a mutiny, to deal with corruption, and to restore civilian rule as soon as practicable. I kind of like the fact that he used that word, that phrase, and that's because that's the exact phrase that the North used in 1953. When Anthony Nauro moved the motion for independence, the North said they would want to be part of independence, or what they want. Sorry, they wanted independence as soon as practicable. They didn't put any time to it. It took us a while. We wanted to have independence in 3 years. That's in 1956. We didn't get it until 7 years later, in 1960. But let's go on. So anyway, Rossi used the exact same phrase. It says we're going to have what's the word? It's going to restore civilian rule as soon as practicable. In assessing the motives as well as the consequences of the military coup of January 15, 1966, attention should be drawn to the various interpretations and excuses offered. Firstly, some people saw it as an attempt to end northern domination, which is something you're going to get if you read the book by Ben Gule, Nigeria's Five Majors. The idea that the North was dominating and we're going to Islamize everybody is one of the things that they mentioned. And also, Adewale Ademeyi also mentioned something like that. It was one of the reasons for the quote-unquote revolution. Secondly, some regarded it as an attempt to remove corruption in government. You'll find that, for instance, in the speech by Kaduna Zogu was talking about the fact that, there's a lot of issues there was tribalism, there was nepotism, there was corruption and stuff like that. Thirdly, others hoped that it would introduce an honest and just program of political administrative reform to correct the structural imbalance in the federation. No one quarreled with these aims. General Rossi took power by force. Failure to court-martial the plotters was his fatal mistake. I don't think it was a mistake, but I think it was because they were in on it together. You couldn't court-martial them because the major guys that planned the coup were in on it with Rossi. So to court-martial them would be to what's the word now? Punish those who gave him power. So it says whether it's about ending northern domination or removing corruption in government or reforming the administration and structural imbalance in the federation, nobody had any issues with it. And this is where I'm going. This is why I actually brought up this book. Consequently, there was an atmosphere of general relief. By the way, we're speaking here, Anthony Nauro. Consequently, there was an atmosphere of general relief immediately after the coup of 15th January, until the pattern of killings which emerged when the dust has cleared revealed that this was a coup organized by young Igbo officers in the army. Whatever they may claim was their basic plan, its effect was that civilian leaders and senior military officers from other areas and ethnic groups were killed, while those from Igbo areas were spared. All non-Igbo senior military officers above the rank of major who were accessible, were killed in the January 15th coup. And I've said it several times. If Adebayo was around, he would have been killed. If Faji was around, he would have been killed. If Obafemi Ogundipo was around, he would have been killed. The only reason those people were not killed was because they were not in the country. All right. All non-Igbo senior military officers above the rank of major, who were accessible were killed in the January 15 coup. There was only one exception to this when a junior Igbo officer, halfway through his midnight sleep, was killed in Apapa for refusing to hand over the key of the armory. Therefore, to most Nigerians, the incidents of 15 January were a clumsily camouflaged attempt to secure Igbo domination of the government of the country. This impression was later reinforced by certain appointments. Do we have any moderator here? I would like us to focus on conversations. We have some of these clowns coming to disturb us. All right. Let's continue. Just becoming, are you there? Or J-Links? If you're there, please just help mute some of these people. Again, I'm reading Anthony Arauro's speech of 12th August 1968. So it says here, the opportunities of January 15 were misused in several ways by the Iransi regime in the months that followed. For a while, every Nigerian hoped that the country would go on to achieve greater progress in its development generally. Unfortunately, General Iransi allowed matters to be taken out of his hands by prominent Igbo leaders in the army, in the public service, and in public life. Affairs in the public service and the armed forces appeared to lend color to the impression that the coup of January 15 was designed to install Igbos in position of power. Listen, I'm going to read this from two sources, what I'm about to read right now. It says here, out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. Let me read something to you from this book by Adewale Ademoyega. It says here, if the truth must be spoken, Iransi had implicit faith in his own type of Nigerians, the non-revolutionary and the reactionary type of Easterners and Midwest Igbos. Therefore, as soon as he had taken over the reins of power, he promoted more than 12.5 of them. It tallies with what Enauro is saying here. It says he promoted more than 12.5 of them from major to lieutenant colonel and gave them all the senior and sensitive positions in the army and air force. Apart from these, only 3 others were promoted from major to lieutenant colonel, and those 3 were Northerners. Their promotions stemmed from the guilt of Iransi and his ill-conceived notion of placating the Northerners. But in so promoting the Northern officers, he jumped over the heads of 5 Yoruba officers whom he did not care for, thus giving people the impression that the coup was designed and executed to achieve and promote Igbo domination of Nigeria. This is from Adewale Ademoyega, Why We Struck. Now back to Enauro. It says here, affairs in the public service and the armed forces appeared to lend color to the impression that the coup of January 15 was designed to install Igbos in positions of power. Out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, April is just three months after the coup. Out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. General Iransi drew his principal officers from the Igbo ethnic group. Ethnic groups tend to be chauvinistic, but the Igbos were the most militantly chauvinistic, and this naturally created apprehensions in the minds of others. Now, there's a book, for instance, by Iluogbelam. Is that his name? Chuks Ilogbunam, where he was trying to explain this away. But again, I think it's something that people from the Southeast should try to understand. Nigerians are not fools. Like, something has happened in the past. We know what happened. It makes no sense to gaslight people by telling them that we're not seeing it very well. Like, it's clear that happened. Why is this important? Because, see, let me tell you something. After the coup, a lot of people were happy. They didn't know why it happened, or they were just happy that, we can heave a sigh of relief. Like, they were just happy that, quote unquote, the worst was over. You know, all this tension was over. So Nigeria would, until they now heard that the leaders who were killed were from certain parts, and certain other parts of Nigeria, the leaders were spared. That was when people began to question if it was a coup for Nigeria at all, or for just about Igbo. And you have to understand, if you're a human being, if you're a human being and you are being fair, if you really ask yourself that question, how would you feel? And by the way, if you cried over JAMB result of last year, that was even not real. That was even the issue of the JAMB result, by the way, was error of Igbo people. Truth be told, not that they wanted to do it, or maybe they sabotaged it, I don't know, but they were Igbo, but they made that mistake, and yet people still blame the head of JAMB for doing something against the people. Now imagine that, and that of course it makes sense, because apart from Lagos, the 5 southeastern states were involved. Meanwhile, there were more people from Lagos than from the entire 5 southeastern states, but just details. Anyway, the point is that whatever feeling you had, now imagine they kill your leaders, they don't kill any other person. You have worse feeling. That's how Nigerians felt. People felt betrayed. Like, everybody just noticed that you've unalived our own people, but you've not done anything to your own people. So people started asking questions. That was where the problem began. The coup was not even, the coup had something to do with the war, but the coup was not the reason people just say, oh, now we're going to go and start fighting people. They were actually happy. Back to this page, it says here, there was an atmosphere of general relief immediately after the coup of January 15th, until the pattern of killings which emerged when the dust had cleared revealed that this was a coup organized by young Igbo officers in the army. And then, like we read earlier, all the people who died, they had one thing in common: they were not Igbos. Those who lived had something in common: they were all Igbos. So people just put 2 and 2 together, and they got 4. Now let's go. We're going to come back to this book because it's going to be one major source of information in this conversation. But if you have the book, keep a finger there. Let's go to the book by Nebo Graham Douglas. It says in March 1966. By the way, if you're just coming in, thank you for joining us. Keep our tapping if you're on TikTok, please. And if you're on YouTube or Facebook, kindly put this out there. Amen. I thought you were preaching. Yes, it's the gospel of truth. So I'm not used to this particular clothes, so my body is doing somehow. Anyway, let's go on. So please power tap on TikTok. Thank you very much for your support. Let's go on. So I was saying something earlier. This is from a man called Nebo Graham Douglas. He was the Attorney General under Ojukwu. This book I'm reading right now was published in 1968. This was in the heat of the moment, right? In March 1966, following the military coup of January 1966 and the establishment of military regimes both at the federal Nigerian level and in all the constituent regions of the Federation, I was appointed by Lieutenant Colonel C. Odumegwu Ojukwu, then military governor of Eastern Nigeria, as Attorney General for Eastern Nigeria, to assist him, as he put it, quote, in the work of reconstruction, end quote, facing the new military setup throughout the country. I was in that position when in May of that year, I became aware. Please listen very closely. I became aware in May of that year of the proposal to replace the existing federal system of administration with a unitary system. In my official capacity, I was called upon to advise on the draft decree by means of which the conversion was intended to be carried out. I advised against it. It was obvious to me that the move was Eastern, more accurately Igbo-inspired, and I advised my military governor that if it was enacted and implemented, there would be such a violent reaction from the North that rather than unify the country, it would tend towards its disintegration. Later that month, we attended a meeting of the Central Executive Council in Lagos, and for informal discussions with my colleagues. The Attorney General for the Midwest and the Solicitors General of the North and West made me feel certain that I had given the proper advice. However, decision on the draft decree will be taken not by the Central Executive Council, but by the Supreme Military Council. On Tuesday, 24th May, in a nationwide broadcast, the head of state and Supreme Commander of the Nigerian Armed Forces, now the late Major General J.T. Aguiyi-Ironsi, announced the change. Decree number 34 had been promulgated. Now, we're going to come back to this. And let's go to the book by Shehu Shagari. We'll tie everything together. Please just stay with me. Let's go back to Shehu Shagari. It says here, there's a book that I think we should read before Shehu Shagari. I want to read something to you about how the North felt, what the North did. 1 second. I know exactly what they did. It was a wait and see attitude, but I want to read it out. It's loading, please. All right, I found it. Is it Johnny in service? It's conflict and I found it. Crisis and conflict. It says here. Please stay with me. This is going to be good. It says there had been similar attempts. Okay. The military government intended to issue a white paper on the events leading to change of government on January 15 and July 29 and the related disturbances. What did they not do with the groundnut pyramid? It is hoped that this objective presentation of the facts will go a long way to explain all the tragic events which have plagued Nigeria in 1966 and assist all concerned in the earnest search for a just and lasting solution. It was in this climate of general disillusionment with the political ruling class that certain officers in the Nigerian army sought to use the army, created for the defense of the fatherland and the protection of the citizen, to attain purely political ends. Widespread violence followed the Western Region election crisis of 1965, believed by many honest Nigerians to have been rigged on a very large scale. But the revolt in the West only provided, please listen, the revolt in the West only provided the occasion for some officers in the Nigerian army to use the army to attain political ends. There had been a similar attempt during the 1964 federal constitutional crisis, which was foiled by the prompt intervention of army officers who did not believe in the military seizure of political power from civilians. I want to ask one question. How many of us remember the person who planned the 1964 coup? If you remember the person, just write in the comment section. I want to see if those who remember are here or if we just move on. Anybody? Does anybody remember who planned the 1964 coup? As a matter of fact, I put a video up on TikTok and it wasn't in Rossio. Victor Monsonya, thank you, sir. Was Ojukwu who planned the coup. And the reason he planned the coup was because of the crisis in 1964. We talked about this a couple of days ago. There's a video about that on YouTube now. Ojukwu planned the coup before Nzogu. So if you want to know more about that, please watch that video. You'll get more details. Anyway, the point is that this is not the first time a coup was being planned in Nigeria. They had planned one in 1964. And the person who actually planned it was Ojukwu, which tells you again about that ambitious thing. So we're going to, when I said ambition, in case you don't believe, that's when you begin to get it. Please, why is my comment being removed? Maybe you are saying something wrong and TikTok is automatically removing what you're saying. So YouTube, please say something right there so that TikTok can leave it. God bless you and your comments. All right, so let's go back to the book that we're reading. Sorry. All right, Lenny Mio. It's probably the app. Oh, please, let's power tap. This is yours too. Please power tap. Maybe it's the app. Nobody's removing anything. I'm not removing anything. You too. Please power tap, please. Everyone, please. Thank you. It's the app. I'm not. See, so let's go back to this. There had been a similar attempt during the 1964 federal constitutional crisis. What was the constitutional crisis? It was the issue between Balewa and Azikiwe. And I mentioned, of course, we're going to do a session on a book called The Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odiel Femom. And he mentioned in that book that there was rumor at the time that Ojukwu had met with Azikiwe to plan a coup. Interestingly, Azikiwe said no. But beyond that, Ojukwu was still going to plan it anyway. And he was working with certain people. But some of those people, those people that I'm talking about, two of them, David Ejo and Yakubu Gowon, reported Ojukwu to General Foster. And it was the one who quelled the coup. And the reason Ojukwu wanted to have that coup was because he wanted, his own person to be in charge of Nigeria. Why? At the time, he asked a question because the president and the prime minister were having issues, and Ojukwu asked officers, if we have conflicting orders from these two, who should we follow? And so that question got to Welby Everard, who was the GOC at the time. He consulted the Attorney General, and the Attorney General told him that, listen, if there's any conflicting order, the only order you should take, as a matter of fact, is the one from the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister. That leaves out Azikiwe, apparently. And so they're going to have that coup, but it didn't work. But they didn't even bother about it anymore. But by 65, other guys planned another coup. There had been a similar attempt during the 1964 federal constitutional crisis, which was foiled by the prompt intervention of army officers who did not believe in the military seizure of political power from civilians. On that and subsequent occasions, the army officers plotting to seize power were assisted by some prominent civilians, including politicians. I said this the other day. Says the army officers plotting to seize power were assisted by some prominent civilians, including politicians. It is to the credit of the former civilian federal government that in the interest of peace, no army officer or civilian was subsequently punished for the planned military coup of December 1964. Looking back now, hindsight is 2020, as they say. Without blaming our elders, I think they should have made people pay for what they planned in 64. Why? Because once you condone bad behavior, you are actually in a way rewarding it. And you're also giving people leeway to continue doing something wrong. When they discovered that some civilians were involved, even now I'm thinking, who knows? They should have done something. The government knew, the federal government knew, they should have done something to the army officers and those people. And we know it was Ojukwu. If you want to know how I know this, read the book by David Ejo. That was the first military administrator of Midwest. The book is called Reminisce. Not Alaga Ibileo. Right. So, thank you very much for that. You reinforce bad behavior. So he says it is to the credit of the former civilian federal government that in the interest of peace, that is the problem of Nigeria. I mean, people would tell me that some people will say, oh, you are doing well by talking about these things. Jesse, this is a work. Oh, I have something for your dad, by the way, Jesse. I really need editors. Can your dad edit? I have a job for your dad, Jesse. I need an editor. The work is getting too much. Like, the videos coming out are insane. There are many. So if your dad can edit, please send his CV to me. And God bless you and your father. All right. Adesunji Omotola on YouTube. Thank you very much. Why did you mute Abba? No, it's stopping me. I don't have time for banter. Let's continue. It says, I'll read that again. Maybe that's what pained you. To pain you very well. It says, it is to the credit of the former civilian federal government that in the interest of peace, no army officer or civilian was subsequently punished for the planned military coup of December 1964. The tragedy in using the army to resolve purely political questions is that a military coup usually brings in its trail tragic episodes in which violence and cold-blooded murder is the order of the day. The experience in Nigeria since January 15 has followed this familiar historical pattern, which all men of goodwill are now trying to arrest. It is unfortunate that the pattern of killings, both in January 15 and July 29, followed mainly tribal lines, as will be shown in the proposed white paper. We're not going to read the white paper today. I'm just trying to get into some things. So let's jump from there into what happened after the January 15 coup. The real truth, based upon investigations, the details of which will soon be published, is that as far back as August 65, of course, we read this last week, we read the document from Special Branch Report, right, that was published in April of 1966. So it says, as far back as August 1965, a small group of army officers of a certain ethnic group, dissatisfied with political development within the Federation, began to plot, in collaboration with some civilians, the overthrow of what was then the government of the Federation of Nigeria and the eventual assumption of power in the country. Who were the original planners of the coup? Anybody knows the answer to that question? Who were the original planners of the coup? Just know. I want to make sure that we're actually on the same page. I'm talking about the 66 school now. Who were the original planners? Just if you know, like next 30 seconds, I just want to make sure we are engaging on this thing. So if you know, please just let us know that you know. No, we've mentioned this thing. Yeah, there were three. So who were they? Iwaju, Tawenjawaju, Ifajuna, Donokafo, Oji. I like this our class. So people are on fire. That's true. No, not Nzogu. Nzogu was brought in October. I think I mentioned this yesterday. It was Ifajuna, Don Okafo, and Oji. Okafo, I think, brought in Anufuro. Anufuro brought in Nzogu. Nzogu brought in Ademoiga. And then eventually, they brought in Chukuka as well. Ifajuna and Don Okafo brought in Chukuka. So it was Ifajuna, Okafo, Oji original. Then you had Chukuka, Anufuro, Zogu, and Ademoiga, making 7. So you had 5 majors and 2 captains. Anyway, those first 3 airplanes in August of 1965. But the crazy part is that they work with civilians, and I've said it several times. Those civilians, we know who they are. Let's not deceive ourselves. I think the reason they just let these things slide is because they didn't want to. They just wanted peace. But the point with that peace now is that we are paying for it with the propaganda that people are spreading all over the place. In truth, the people who planned the coup were those soldiers, but there were civilians involved. And we know the way they moved on the 15th and the 16th. People like Orizu, people like Mbadiwe, people like Azikiwe, the way they moved. Not too clean like that. So let's get back into this. The real truth, based upon investigations, the details of which will be published soon, is that as far back as August 1965, a small group of army officers of a certain ethnic group, dissatisfied with political development within the Federation, began to plot, in collaboration with some civilians, to the overthrow of what was then the government of the Federation of Nigeria and the eventual assumption of power in the country. On January 15, 1966, the plan was executed, although the original plan stipulated that the action intended by the plotters should take place simultaneously in all the regional capitals. All available information indicates that there was in fact no intention to carry out the plan in Benin and Enugu. So not only Lagos, Ibadan, and Kaduna, now they corrupt people there. Every other place. Nonsense. It has been established that the plotters brought in some junior officers and other ranks to assist in the execution of the plans on the threat of death if they refuse to collaborate. Example, Foloyewale. Example, Ganiyu Adeleke. They were brought in under such conditions. Others participated as soldiers, obeying command instructions, although some joined the revolt of their own free will, e.g., Captain Uwobosi, the one who killed Akintola, Chief Akintola in Ibadan. Example, Bengbule, those ones joined on their own free will. The plan of the army officers appeared to have been successfully carried out in Kaduna, but in Lagos the coup was foiled by the intervention of the bulk of the Nigerian army, to whom the civilian government had to hand over power. The mutinous activities of January 15 resulted in the death of 7 people in Lagos, including the Prime Minister, 5 senior military officers, the Premier of Western Nigeria, 7 people in Kaduna, including the Premier of Northern Nigeria, and 2 senior officers of the Nigerian army. I'm rushing because of time. For a period of 7 months thereafter, every Nigerian hoped that the country would go on to achieve greater progress in development generally. But there was the vexed question of the fate of the plotters of the January 15 incident. Some Nigerians thought of them as heroes in leading the overthrow of the much-hated politicians, but their killing of innocent army officers, mainly from regions other than their own, inflicted a major wound on the Nigerian army, famous for its discipline. It is unfortunate that a decision one way or the other was not promptly taken in this regard. Whether it was learned in some quarters of the army that those directly involved, although detained in various prison establishments in the country, were being paid their regular salaries plus other allowances. I'll read it again. When it was learned in some quarters of the army that those directly involved, although detained in various prison establishments in the country, were being paid their regular salaries plus other allowances, the hitherto smothered feeling that those concerned should have been brought to book according to military tradition apparently began to show expression in the impatience of a section of the army. The already charged situation, I'm going to speak, I'm just trying to get us somewhere. The already charged situation reached an explosive point when a very strong rumor started circulating that there was a further plot to annihilate army officers and civilians from the same region as most of those who had been killed in January. This was the immediate cause of the events of July 29. After the 15 January coup, the Northerners, who were mostly affected by the change, adopted an attitude of wait and see, even though there were jubilations that the politicians had been overthrown. In several parts, especially Kano, Katsina, and Zaria, some of the ex-ministers of the former government were molested and jeered on their return to their provinces. But the situation changed because of some things. We're going to talk about this situation, why they changed very soon. Let me quickly explain something. Number one was that, yes, there was a coup, people were killed, people were happy all over Nigeria. Everybody was celebrating that, oh, we're going to change everything. But then they noticed that, I say, they kill everybody but their own people. One. Number two, the people who organized the coup, their salaries were paid, allowances were paid while they were in prison. One second though. You know, there's no way we're going to have sessions like this and not have fools come around. Even God had meeting in the book of Job and Satan came. So I have to be muting them from time to time. All right. So what you see essentially is that they were happy to even see changes. As a matter of fact, from this document, in Kano, in Katsina, in Zaria, when ministers returned home from Lagos, people were jeering at them. They were, molesting them in the streets because they were happy that there was change. Everybody was okay with it until, number one, newspaper articles and comments from Lagos advocating introduction of measures which many Northerners believed were inimical to their interests. The attitude of some Southerners living in the North who became less friendly and provocative by displaying let me not rush. I'm going to read those parts. Let's take it one by one. The first thing that made them stop their wait and see was when they noticed that the people that were killed, no prominent Igbo man was killed. Listen, nobody's going to be able to get out of that stuff forever. There's no need to fight it. It's the reality. There's no need to fight it. Igbos were not killed. No single major person who was Igbo. Number two, those who organized the coup, they were not court-martialed. They were detained, yes, but while they were detained, they were being paid. How can you detain a person and be paying them salary? And you think you're looking for justice? People will know that you're lying now. No, you're lying. Number three, besides hearing things that the federal government wanted to do that the North was not going to like. Number four, the attitude of some Southerners. Let's stop playing around. It's not Southerners, it's Igbo. I'm going to read it from the book by... It says Southerners here. Who were the Southerners? You're going to hear about them when we get to Shehu Shagari's book. It says the attitude of some Southerners living in the North who became less friendly and provocative by displaying pictures of Major Nzogu and the late Sardauna and commenting that the country is now in their hands and no more in the hands of Northerners. And then there were articles and comments in the Gaskia Tafi Kwabo reporting such incidents, in adding here and there that as far as the North was concerned, the situation was hopeless. Thus, a feeling of resentment and fear was created in the minds of ordinary people. Meanwhile, in the North, the local petty contractors and party functionaries whose livelihood depended solely on political patronage became active. Most of them, like the counterparts in other regions, were indebted to the Northern Marketing Board or the Northern Nigeria Development Corporation. They were the hardest hit by the change of government, especially as all of those indebted to the Marketing Board were made to pay up their arrears. All right, so let me just quickly explain, and then let's go to the book by Shehu Shagari. So what you see here essentially is this. There were rumors that they were going to kill more people in the North. They were going to keep more officers in the North. That rumor was out there. Number 3, sorry, I don't even know what number I am now. Is it number 4, number 5? There was something that was meant to happen that Iransi should have done. Let me read something to you from the book by Shehu Shagari now. It says here, in the meantime, another issue had cropped up on my return to Sokoto. Major General Iransi invited the Sultan, Sir Abubakar III, to Lagos for consultation. The Sultan consulted his traditional cabinet. We reasoned that acceptance of the invitation might be misconstrued as a tacit support for Iransi's increasingly disagreeable conduct of public affairs. Accordingly, we advised the Sultan to convey an explanation disobliging the request. A man of wide sympathies, the Sultan rejected our conclusion, recalling that he had once visited Lagos, February 1945, at the instance of Sir Arthur Richards, the British colonial governor. So he was even more inclined to accept the same invitation from a Nigerian head of state. It was a day-long visit on 12th March 1966, during which the Sultan delivered a reassuring speech to troops, many of them Northerners. Major General Iransi was happy to have the Sultan in Lagos, for he was trying to stem the gathering tide of Northern discontent. Let me quickly say something. What he should have done was that he should have actually visited the regions. But for some reason, for whatever reason, maybe he couldn't get out of Lagos or whatever, he wanted the Sultan to visit him in Lagos all the way from Sokoto, which he did. And so the idea basically was that working with the traditional leaders from different parts of Nigeria, especially the North and the West, especially the North, was going to help him to consolidate power. However, he says here, this is again his book by Shehu Shagari, it's called Beckon to Serve. But the attitude of some Southerners living in the North, who became less friendly and provocative by displaying pictures of Major Zogu and late Sardauna, they became less friendly, they became provocative. Mika, this is not about you. This is, in fact, why do you block this one? I don't know how dumb you are. Thank you, Prof. Oh, I'm using the wrong device. Sorry. My fault. I'm using the wrong device. Where's that clown? We must not talk about history again because it's going to make you and your people angry. You're not serious. So apparently his goal was to placate the North. Sorry, we have fools on YouTube as well. Like, it's crazy. I don't know how they manufacture these guys. They do it as wholesale. It's amazing. Anyway, so what you see here is that, number one, Southerners became less friendly and provocative. When you go to when you go to Shehu Shagari's book, it says that they were loudly proclaiming the regime to be theirs and even making a virtue of the January coup killings. This attitude spread from offices and public institutions to places like motor terminals and markets. Some Igbo shopkeepers even took to displaying large-sized photographs which depicted Major Zogu standing beside the body of the slain Sir Ahmadu Bello, the former Northern Premier. Igbo people will draw attention to the Northerners to the photographs and say of Nzogu, Shine Maganinku, which means in Hausa, he is the one who can knock sense into you. Some Igbo also took to public playing of gramophone record called Machine Gun, whose celebratory lyrics of the January killings were interspersed with the sound of gunshots. Such unwarranted provocations naturally exacerbated the unease between Northerners and the Igbo. So I like the way Shehu Shagari made it very clear, it's Igbos. That one was being politically correct when he says Southerners. And by the way, I said something to somebody who was saying something to me on TikTok, on YouTube. To be honest, I think people are repeating the mistakes of the past. Where you are jeering at people in a foreign space. See, forget that we are all Nigerians. If I go to Sokoto now, it's a foreign space. We're all in Nigeria, but it's not my space. So it's one thing for you to even go there and conduct yourself with sense. It's another thing for you to go there and tell those people that now we own this place now. We don't win. Our person don't become Oga. And then you start throwing that. We're talking about the what led to the war. We'll tie everything together. So we're talking about Ojuku's ambition. We have not really gone deep into it. We'll get into that later. But the killings during the coup was one of the reasons that this happened, because people started noticing that, be like saying now only one place to concentrate on. Now make matters worse, the people. It's not the issue of one person said it. People will tell you you are judging based on one person. It's not a one person thing. I've said it several times. It's not even 1,000 people thing. It's a cultural thing. And how do I know that? Because I still see it today, even today, the culture of that. And the funny thing, I don't know where the hubris comes from, because there's nothing to be proud of. Just unnecessary arrogance. You are taunting, you are insulting. The same thing happens everywhere, even in Yoruba land. It happened in Lagos, it happened in Ghana, it happened in, I've seen it on the streets of Lebanon. It's the same thing. Now we own this place, now we get this place, It's a cultural thing that should change. But if you don't want to change it, that's fine. But just at least know what don't happen before. You take pictures of Ahmadu Bello that was slain and Nzogu, and then you have he's on a dragon. Ahmadu Bello is a dragon, and then this one is conquering it. You put the face. Then you have songs by what's this man? Celestine Uku, Machine Gun. You have Rex Lawson, Eu Banagwa or something like that. You have all these things at the same time playing in a place that is not even ancestrally yours. But the funny thing, even then, the people did not react. Just so you know exactly what caused everything. Even at this point, people didn't start killing anybody. So the coup had happened, the killings had happened, the threat had happened, the rumors everywhere that more northern officers would be killed, that was in the air. People were being taunted in their own land. But even then, they didn't kill anybody. They didn't start killing Easterners, at least not yet. Am I saying it's okay that they killed them? Of course not. But because people say things like, oh, they killed us because they hate us, they didn't hate you. Now, what now caused the wala? Let's go to crisis and conflict in Nigeria. From here, I will now go to the book by Nabo Graham Douglas. He says here, when the Nwokedi Commission was appointed, most of the civil servants in the Federation, particularly in the North, conceived plan to bulldoze the unification of the civil service through come what may. On the 24th of May, the Unification Decree, a major constitutional and political step which had not been widely discussed, was announced, along with the dissolution of political and tribal parties decree. The key words in that announcement are, quote, the regions are abolished. Let me quickly say something. Because I've seen certain people from the same parts of Nigeria saying things like Yakubu Gowon abolished regionalism. It was not Iransi. Number one, I happen to have the Decree 34 It must be somewhere. If we have to read it, we'll get to it. When you look at Decree 34, it's written there. The regions are abolished. They will say, oh no, but there were still regions. The question is, do you even understand what they are talking about? The autonomy was gone. Everybody now reports to the center. The people at the regions are now appointed by the guy at the center. The independence that you had as a region was gone. Excuse me. A lot of people don't know that back in the day, the West had a different constitution. Of course, it was subservient to the federal constitution, but it has its own constitution. But you are suspending everything else, so everybody concentrates at the decrees. Concentrates on the decree coming from the federal government. The regions were not abolished by Yakubu Gowon. What Yakubu Gowon did was create more states. The regions were actually abolished by Rossi through the Unification Decree of May 24, 1966. That decree was the straw that broke the camel's back. I want to read something to you from Neil Graham Douglas's book. The book again is called Ojuku's Rebellion and World Opinion. It says here, in my official capacity, I was called upon to advise on the draft decree by means of which the conversion was intended to be carried out. I advised against it. It was obvious to me that the move was Eastern, more accurately, Igbo inspired. And I advised my military governor that if it was enacted and implemented, there would be such a violent reaction from the North that rather than unify the country, it would tend towards its disintegration. What do you see here? Ojukwu is reaching out to his own Attorney General in the East in May of 66 to help draft a unification decree. Do you still think that he didn't know about the coup? It's the same decree that Iransi was working on. So essentially what you saw here was, I said it 2 days ago, it was a two-factor authentication. Since the civilian guys did not work, civilian option did not work because of MPC and the Dipcharima and the rest of them, they are using the military. And using the military, they have to do what Azikiwe had always wanted. Listen, unification decree is the exact dream of Azikiwe. I know Azikiwe said he wanted federalism. By the way, if you study Azikiwe's thoughts on constitutional, on Nigerian constitution, it will be difficult for you to actually be able to say this is what he believed in. Because originally he wanted unification or unitary system, then later on he said federalism. Then his own idea of federalism was to break apart other regions but his own. For instance, he said, you cannot break the East, but see that West, break it into 4. There will be Central Yoruba State, or whatever he called it. There will be Lagos State, there will be Midwest, and then there will be something he called Cassava and Kola North State, which will be the Abeokuta and Ijebu province. So you guys from Abeokuta or Ijebu, they would have created a state for you called Cassava and Kola North State. That was Azikiwe's bright idea in 1957. It constantly changed, but the thing is, it would have been cool if it was, you could have an idea and then you make it better, but it was vaccinating. And so it wasn't a surprise that his own people were trying to put together that kind of constitution in May of 66 without consulting others. In other words, the idea was to dominate Nigeria. Listen, I am not here to say hate a group or one group is bad or there's something wrong with this group, they destroy Nigeria. That's not the point. We're just talking what happened in history. And the truth of the matter is that if you go way back, what you will notice is from Azikiwe himself in the 1940s, there is a way he wanted Igbos to look. Azikiwe wanted the Igbo to be the... And listen, I said something the other day. Somebody said, oh, they hated Azikiwe because he did something, he betrayed them. Like, listen, you really know what that man did for you until he stopped doing it. I'm going to read something to you from... I'd like to read it. I could just say it, but I think it's going to be better for me to read it. What he did was to help his people, to get them to have power, to help them to be the focus of Nigeria. And I said one of the problems with that is because there's something Nauro said in a speech. The Igbos never had, and again, if you are Igbo here, this is with all due respect, I'm not trying to insult you, it's just history. This is what Enaro said. The Igbos never had a golden age. They were waiting for Nigeria in order to have golden age. And if you read Marjorie Parham's statement in The Listener in 1960, she said the Igbos would be the ones who would help Nigeria unite because they need Nigeria. That's what Marjorie Parham said. Maybe I'll read it properly, but 1 second. No, let me read that Marjorie Parham stuff first. Let me read that Marjorie Parham stuff. But when Marjorie Parham wrote this, she was on the Igbo side. She was saying, "Oh, these guys are the good ones. They're the ones that we can work with." But apparently, eventually, she gone. You know what they say? You're gonna learn. You're gonna learn the hard way. You're gonna learn where she learned. And this is what she wrote in 1960, 20th of October. She said, "I believe that the Igbo are the main force for unity. They need unity. As the poorest region, they have had to pour out of their overcrowded forests to seek work all over the other regions. Again, having no great history, no impressive chiefs or cities, they need to find their pride, their fulfillment in Nigeria itself." That, let me tell you something. I see here today when people say things like, "We own Nigeria." In other words, you don't even think about your space. You are talking about we own Nigeria. She says here they need it. They need unity. This is what gives them that. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just trying to tell you why. I'm trying to tell you why Zeke did what Zeke did. What did Zeke do? Let me read something to you from Arwo's book. It's from his autobiography. He said, let me see. 1 second, please. Let me read from Arwo's autobiography. Say it's bad, say it. Want to hear something? Oh boy. The reason they needed Nigeria so badly. We're going to read this and then I'll read something to you from Enaro. Arwo says, "By the end of August 1940, I was certain in my own mind that Dr. Azikiwe was not a conscientious member of the Nigerian youth movement and that for some reasons best known to himself, he was bent on destroying this nationalist organization." By the way, he destroyed it by 1941. What did he do? He played the ethnic card, the same tribal card that people talked about. That was what Azikiwe played in 1941 to destroy the NYM. And for the most part, he succeeded. He was bent on destroying this nationalist organization for some reasons best known to himself. At the same time, please listen to this. You see what you see on social media till today. Azikiwe's dreams are still alive and well. It says, "At the same time, it seemed clear to me that his policy was to corrode the self-respect of the Yoruba people as a group, to build up the Igbos as a master race, to magnify his own vaunted contributions to the nationalist struggles, to dwarf and misrepresent the achievements of his contemporaries, and to discount and nullify the humble but sterling quota which older politicians had made to the country's progress. Other incidents happen and so on and so forth." Now, here's the point. If you read this, you could say, and I would agree, if you say something like, "Oh, but that's Awo now." It's not Awo that's saying it. It's not Awo. What else would he say? So I'm going to invite you, I won't read it. I'm going to invite you to look for a document. It's a 1949 speech that Zeke gave at the Igbo Federal Union Congress in Aba, 1949. That was where he said the God of Africa has specially created the Igbo race to lead the children of Africa from the bondage of the ages. And he talked about how they're going to lead Africa. The idea was for Igbos to be the master race. He wanted them to be in charge of the country. And the reason for that is because there is a statement that this woman made here. Marjorie Parham, she said, "Again, having no great history, no impressive chiefs or cities. They need to find their pride, their fulfillment in Nigeria itself. I'm going to read one more thing just to get that, just to get it in very well. Is an oral speech at Addis Ababa. This thing has to catch up with me. Like we've got to move. Huh? Not this one. Okay, let me read something to you. Okay. Yeah. Again, sorry, if you're from the East, sincerely, I know they fight though. Just that we have to know why people do what they do so that we can know how to, how we can work together. Because for the most part, people I say, we don't understand ourselves enough in this country, and that's a major problem. And that's what we also always assume. I wish I could get collections of these books you are reading out to us. Even me, I'm looking for more books. But the ones I can share, we'll share. Let me read something from, yeah. Oh, there are two things I want to read, but let me read this one first. It says here, it talks about all the kingdoms that made up Nigeria. It talks about the Fulani Empire, talk about Benin, talk about Oyo, talk about the kingdoms of the Niger Delta and Calabar. Please, let's power tap. This thing don't start though, I beg. This thing has started. I have to pause. Please, thank you very much for getting us to 100K. I really appreciate it, but please, this thing is hanging. Please. Please. Let's hold on for a second. If you're on YouTube, please try and understand. On TikTok, where we're streaming from, we have to, like the live or else it will go off. That's what I'm trying to look for. So please, if you're on TikTok, please, I really need your help. All right, so please listen to this. Please listen. Why the need for domination? You'll find it here. It says, the loosely organized Igbo, say of the three most populous ethnic groups of Nigeria, therefore, that's Hausa, Fulanis, Igbos, Yoruba, only the Igbos never had an organized state, an imperialist past, or a golden age. They had no centralized political administration or loyalties, and never had an era of kings, dukes, or conquerors. One more thing. Please, if you can, I would really want you to please power tap. So, all the history that you will say, oh, I have this thing. Mike Lincoln, I will put something together very soon. I'll put something together. But the funny thing is that the more you read, the more you find something new. But yeah, I'll put something together. So what you see essentially is that what you have, what you can say, oh, I have something. The truth of the matter is that some people are trying to get it in Nigeria. I'm going to read something, and I hope people don't get offended. But again, I'm reading the speech by Anthony Enaro because I think he understood everything that happened, and I think this is just amazing. It says, we're talking about Ojukwu. I know I'm going ahead of myself, but I think it's important to read this before we get into the other things. It says, Ojukwu and these leaders have also spread the lie that they are hated because they are hardworking. Have you heard that thing before? We are better than everybody. Yoruba people know they work. I've seen videos from different parts of Nigeria. I have the videos, and it's a shame, by the way, that people will do this. People in Yoruba land say Yoruba people don't work. It's Igbos that do the work. The same thing in Akwa Ibom, the same thing in the north, the same thing in Benin, everywhere. one Igbo man is equal to 10 Kinikome. One Igbo is equal to 1,000 Awusame. Everywhere. Nobody knows how to work. Everybody is lazy. Yoruba people are lazy. Now we do all the work. Now they help them. That started with this propaganda. Ojukwu and the leaders have spread the lie that they are hated because they are hardworking, because they are Christians, and because they are more westernized than any other ethnic group in Nigeria. It has also been falsely stated by them that nobody has ever expressed regrets for the events and disturbances of September 1966. The fact, of course, is that, please listen, the Igbos were late starters in some respects. Group action was new to them. At least there was an Igbo consciousness and an Igbo nationhood. Listen, the Igbo consciousness and Igbo nationhood began during the colonial era. The Igbo nationhood. There's a book I've read here before. I've read it several times. I don't know if it's... I have a pile of books beside me here, but I don't know if... Okay, it's here. It's a book by Joe Igbokwe, where he talks about the fact that there is no general conscious... No, let me be like I did lie. May I read them for you? I'm trying to answer a question of domination, then we'll go back to the topic of today. So let me read this very quickly. It says, many times, this is Professor Okudiba Noli, the book is called Ethnic Politics in Nigeria. It says, many times, the various Igbo pre-colonial polities did not make any contact whatsoever before colonization, and were even in certain cases oblivious of the existence of one another. In fact, the Igbo-speaking people were self-consciously divided into Olu and the Igbo peoples. Even today, the Olu are very reluctant, except sometimes in urban centers, to refer to themselves as Igbo. This is where I'm going now. Therefore, among certain neighboring peoples, there was a definite distinction between Olu and Igbo. While in what is known today as Igbo land, listen, there was no history of common pre-colonial consciousness and identity. If Joe Igbokwe is an Efulefu, is Professor Okudiba Noli an Efulefu as well? I'm asking the question, what's that name? What's your name, sir? Austin Art. If Joe Igbokwe is an Efulefu, is Professor Okudiba Noli an Efulefu as well? The book is called Ethnic Politics in Nigeria by Professor Okudiba Noli. Is he also an Efulefu? You don't like the truth. People are telling you your life. You are still angry. Instead of you to, don't worry. You came from heaven. That's why you say, today you are from heaven, tomorrow you are from Israel, you are from Ife, you are from the earth, you are from the sea, you are from everywhere. May God give you your history back. It says here, Igbo land, in what is known today, in what is today known as Igbo land, there was no history of common pre-colonial consciousness and identity. Certainly, there were no wars fought together by the Igbo as a collectivity. There was no consciousness and no identity. Why is all this important? Because of what I'm about to read now. It says here, group action was new to them. At least there was an Igbo consciousness and Igbo nationhood. Consequently, on the eve of independence, when 1960, some of their leaders felt, by the way, let me tell you something. I'm going to finish what I'm reading. Oh, please, let me just say this. If you read the book by Elechi Amadi, so not Elechi Amadi, even Elechi Amadi as well, but the one by Ken Saro-Wiwa is called On a Darkling Plain. There was something I took away from that book. It's the way he was able to separate Igbo people from Igbo leaders. But this is what he did then, I cannot do now. I'll tell you why. Because what the Igbo leaders did then, they have been able to make it a culture among the people, especially as far as politics is concerned, especially as far as culture is concerned, especially as far as citizenship within Nigeria and the rights of a citizen and indigent are concerned. But he made it very clear that the leaders did this, the leaders did that. The reason why I say the people are their leaders now is because if I say what your leaders do, you will insult me and support those leaders. Therefore, you are together with them. Let me tell you what they said the leaders did. On the eve of independence, some of the leaders felt that they must act as a group in order to progress. This was to be the golden age which the people never had. Why did they keep talking about domination? Because there had been no golden age, and this would be a way to actually get that thing. And that's why Majiparam said they need unity. And that's why Charles Oyema made that speech in 1945. He said the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. It's because, listen, it's not because they are bad people. It's because when you wake up, that's your morning. Anytime you wake up is your morning. If you wake up at the time when everybody don't build something, you just appear. Now you want to take advantage of stuff. Well, you have to go through the process. And for you to even think about it, why not try and conquer something? But if you're going to conquer anything, why not just conquer Nigeria? So you are saying Igbos will dominate Nigeria. No, you cannot anymore. It can't work again. We're talking about history here. Keep up. You can't dominate Nigeria. You don't have the capacity anymore. Sorry. You don't have that capacity anymore. When they had the opportunity, even then they didn't have the capacity, they had the opportunity. And when they did, they couldn't do it. But I'm trying to explain to you, because, you know why? Because a lot of our conversations in Nigeria are about what happened. They're important, but like I always say, there are other questions. How did it happen? Who is responsible for it? And then the most important question, why did it happen? And let me say something. The people may not even know. And this is why it pains me sometimes when we tell people like this is what your leaders, these are the things your leaders did, and the people are fighting you and calling you a bigot. I'm not even saying you did it, but since you are always supporting those people who did those things to me, that means you are together. In actual fact, it's not so much you guys and if there's any lesson I took from that on a darkling plane, I mean there are many lessons, for instance, about how folks in Usuka were planning to bomb University of Ibadan, but I mean many terrible things inside that book where they plan for us. But at least I like the fact that Ken Saro-Wiwa was able to say, you know what, the same thing for Ilicha Amadi, Sunset in Biafra. Ilicha Amadi was able to also do, have that dichotomy between the people and the leaders. But today, it's a very different thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. The average educated person in Igbos says the exact same thing as, whatever. And I'm not saying everybody. I know there are exceptions. There are exceptions who don't really care about these things. And I always acknowledge those people. But not only are you in the minority, you are the most quiet people on earth. You don't talk. And the reason you don't talk is because you don't want backlash. Which makes me now question why you will call people cowards. Considering your actions, you can put two and two together, but I don't want to go into the details. What really happened is that if the loud ones are able to get their way, the smart, quote-unquote, smart, quiet ones will take advantage of it. That's what Ojukwu said about Emmanuel Fajuna now. He said he was a courageous coward. It's in that book, Nzogu. He will start while I will run away. He always ran away. When did Igbos call Yoruba cowards, bro? If you ask me, now who I go ask? The matter with this, so he heavy for hand. Thank you, Fitila. You want to see where you are saying it but no proof. The one that I gave you proof, what did you do with the proof? It's a no man's land. We own this place. They're cowards. You've not seen it before. You are looking for proof. I'm not going to change the topic. Who are the Igbo military commanders? Anyway. By the way, when you hear people say things like, it's not just one person, it's a lie. We've come here to talk, for instance, this Lagos thing, Lagos no man's land, just one person is not one person. It's not one person. The eastern region representatives in the parliament in 1950, not 2005, 1950, said they consider Lagos as no man's land. They were talking about the capital. Now you are making it about the state. It's not about one person. That's why I said that what the political leaders used to say that would make somebody like Kesaruwa create that dichotomy, it's difficult for people like me in this generation to say the same thing, because whatever the political leaders are saying, the people are regurgitating it. And there's no way they are doing that without believing in it. Therefore, it would be stupid of me to assume that they are different from the leaders, especially the so-called educated ones. Maybe the non-educated ones may be okay, but those ones that speak English, they are worse. They are good ones, but they're in the minority. We'll come back to this later. Let's go back to the book. We're still discussing what led to the war. If you thought that it was because of the killings, like I say, I don't like to call that thing pogroms because it was not a program. It was killings, violence, terrible events, but definitely not a program. Why? Because it was not a state-sponsored event. The one that was sponsored by the states actually happened in the East. We're going to get to that today. Back to the book by Neville Graham Douglas. It says, on Tuesday, 24th May, in a nationwide broadcast, the head of state and supreme commander of the Nigerian Armed Forces, now the late Major General J.T. Aguiyi-Ironsi, announced the change. Decree number 34 of 1966 had been promulgated. The immediate reaction of the North was as I had foreseen. On Sunday, 29th May, there were unpleasant incidents in most cosmopolitan areas of northern Nigeria, and eastern, more so Igbo residents thereof appeared to have come off pretty badly. The nation at once appeared to be facing the grim prospect of disintegration. To stave this off, the head of state held meetings with representatives of the northern chiefs and subsequently with the military governors of all the regions. Have you noticed a pattern here? This man never really thought anything of Yoruba leaders. There's no account of him trying to see Oni or Alaafin or any of those things, no, or Awujale or Alake. Any small thing is Sokoto and military governors. Now, so what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Somebody, okay, I've heard it. There's a reason I don't want to mention that person's name. He's a billionaire, he's popular in Nigeria, he's from the southeast, he's known. The recording is available. I just want